Welcome to the Whitetail Watch produced by Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. It is Wednesday, December 11th, and as you can see behind me here, the snow is coming down in central Iowa. This is really what we've been needing for some better late season hunting. I don't think we're going to get enough of it to make any real difference, but due to the conditions, I would say overall it's been a little bit slow. So when we come back from break, I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on here, what we can see in the forecast, and maybe a few strategies that we can use here in the week ahead. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Whitetail Institute, Research Equals Results, B3 Releases, XO Broadheads, Exact Sights, Muddy Outdoors Tree Stands, Stealth Cam Trail Cameras, and Hoyt. As I mentioned, the conditions are just a little bit too mild for really good late season hunting here in the Midwest. I'm not going to speak to what's going on down south because I don't know enough about the rut cycles down there and the timing. I know there's a lot of variation from state to state and even regions within each state, but I can speak fairly comfortably to the Midwest and to the northern 2/3 of the United States. We really need now cold temperatures and snow if we're going to push the deer into more of a, I won't call it survival mode, but let's just say increase the urgency with which they go to feed. I'm looking at my trail cameras now pretty much every morning when I get up, just trying to see what's going on out there, just get a sense of what the deer are doing. And overall, I'm seeing slow movement even at night for the most part. I've got a couple of fields that are drawing some deer. I'm seeing some activity, some daylight activity, but only in just a very few spots. It seems like there's no real clear winner as far as what they're feeding on. I've got some corn, I've got beans, I've got brassicas, the Whitetail Institute, wintergreens, and they're hitting pretty much all of it, I would say, equally. If it gets really cold, they're generally going to favor the corn because of the carbohydrate content. But right now, I don't see a clear winner. And I also don't see, like I said, a lot of daylight activity. So this is going to be my last Whitetail Watch for this year because everything from here on out is going to be pretty much the same. I'd be bringing you the same message, just changing the weather forecast. And you can look at the forecasts yourself. You don't need me standing here every week telling you what the forecast is going to be. But as we look ahead, there's a couple of cold days coming the rest of this week, and then it's going to slowly warm back up again to be, I would say, seasonal or maybe slightly above seasonal. And like I said, it's not ideal for late season hunting. If you're going to push the urgency scale on these deer, they need to feel the threat. They need to feel the cold, or the snow needs to cover up some of the things that they've been eating off the ground, and push them more towards areas where the food sources are more concentrated, like fields or food plots if you have them, or even areas where the mast, such as acorns, are more concentrated. If it's mild, they spread out and they feed on a lot of different things. So that's what we're seeing, and I'm also seeing a carryover from the firearm season. Going into that, I was seeing decent number of deer showing up on my different cameras on the food plots and fields, and now that the firearm season has come, even though there's been no pressure on my farm, I think just the overall increase in human activity around the area has shut down quite a few of these spots. I mean, literally shut them down where there's no deer coming out. So it's going to take a couple weeks, in my experience, for the deer to come back from that. It takes time for them to, get comfortable again in certain areas that, they've really felt maybe more pressure than historically what they're used to in that spot. So don't be surprised if that's the situation where you're at. 2 weeks is a pretty common timeline. So we're hunting food. Maybe you could get away with getting back in the timber and hunting near bedding areas if you don't have any food sources to rely on. But if you have food sources, you're usually better off just leaving the deer alone back in the timber and letting them get more comfortable, getting onto a more predictable pattern, and trying to hunt them in the places where they go in the evenings. At least that's been my experience. If you start pushing them deeper in the timber and you bump them in those places, it's going to be a lot harder to ever get them back on any kind of a pattern that's predictable. So I don't hunt the mornings. Plus I have things that I have to do. You know, I've hunted a lot of mornings through the rut, and it's time to get back to work and get, you know, things done and really focus on the afternoons. So that's the pattern that I'm going to be locked in on, and what most people throughout this part of the country are going to be doing. If you're a gun hunter, obviously you've got a lot of different options available to you than if you're a bow hunter. You know, as bow hunters, we really need that natural movement, which means the deer have to be moving in daylight, they have to be comfortable, which means we have to keep the pressure off until the time is right. So if you've got trail cameras, monitor those. Don't start hunting until you're seeing some daylight activity in your spots, because, you know, by you being there, you make it harder for the deer to get comfortable there. Even though you don't feel like you're being picked off by the deer, they are really good at sensing human activity in the areas where they live. So lay off until the time is right, and then just make a limited number of very calculated, you know, first strike type of hunts, and that's going to be the pattern. That's what I'm going to be doing. The tricky part, and we've talked about it many times, the tricky part is always getting out of there at the end of legal shooting time, because unless you're really lucky, that first time in might not yield the buck that you're after. You have to have a way to get out of there. The very best way, without question, is to have somebody drive in with a four-wheeler, vehicle, tractor, something, and bump the deer off there from the outside. You know, spooking them from the inside, you know, you spooking them from the blind or from the tree stand is always going to be worse than having that come from the outside, because the deer will accept that and they'll be right back out in those fields again, you know, right away. I've seen it on cameras where they're back within an hour, and you know, they just don't really take it that seriously when the farmer, quote unquote, comes in with his tractor, or, you know, somebody drives in with a vehicle, especially if it's an area where they're used to some human activity to begin with. So don't try to get out without some kind of a diversion, because that might be the last time that you're going to be able to hunt that spot effectively this time of the year. The deer are really spooky now. They don't take a lot of nonsense from us as hunters. You have to get it right the first time, and if you don't, you need a really good exit plan. So that's going to be the way we hunt the whole rest of this season. You know, I wish I could come back again next week with some inspiration and talk about, you know, a new way to do it, but this is pretty much it. You know, find the food, find the deer, have a plan to get out of there at the end of legal shooting time if you want to hunt that spot again. Well, that's it for this year. I appreciate you joining me for this last episode of the Whitetail Watch, produced by Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And I'll see you back here again in September of 2025 when we fire this series back up again. In the meantime, remember to always dream big.